most important moment of my life.
I spent 3 weeks scouring eBay for a specific set of discontinued accessories just so I could watch Liam Neeson's head melt into itself in a pool of rushed post-conversion in 3 dimensions. Hollywood promised us that 3D was the future of cinema. They gave us James Cameron's $2 billion epic Avatar, Martin Scorsese's love letter to film, Hugo. Today though, the tech, particularly in the home, is an archaeological relic. I decided to revisit this failed era, and I realised something. 3D didn't actually fail. We just spent a decade looking at it the wrong way. This is the history of the 3D cash grab, the pioneers who actually cared, and the moment we realised the greatest abuse of this technology, it wasn't art or cinema at all.
Yeah, that's gonna be cool.
69, dudes!
Back again with the Terminator.
Yes!
T2 3D.
When I decided to look back at 3D, particularly after we did our Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time video, I felt that to really explore it, I needed to go right to the source. I happened to find out my 11-year-old Sony TV actually supports 3D. So I thought I'd get a bunch of the worst and best examples, tuck into it, and understand the core of what happened around 3D in Hollywood. Modern, younger audiences might look at 3D starting around that Avatar era in 2009, and then some slightly older watchers might recall that early 80s red and blue era, the Jaws 3D for example. The truth is, the concept of 3D in movies is over a century old. In 1922, a film called The Power of Love, first ever 3D feature film. So the film utilised that red and green anaglyph system for the 3D experience. And one thing it did, really interestingly, was it gave the audience the option of viewing one of 2 different endings to the film. One was happy, one was tragic, so they would look only through the red or green lens at the end of the film to get ending that they wanted to see. And then in 1952, Hollywood studios were terrified of these newfangled TV sets popping up in people's living rooms, thinking it was going to drive them away from the cinema. So they came up with this new concept, the coming at you marketing.
The picture you're now looking at is that of, well, must I tell you? Now to this young lady, something has been added. Flat, round. In other words, this young lady has 3 dimensions now. Height, width, and very charming thickness.
They started to show the first colour 3D feature, Wan Devil in 1952, and this era gave us The House of Wax, Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, and they started using polarized glasses back then with a dual projector system. Then 1980s, as I said about the Jaws 3D era, that was the red and blue cardboard glasses, and this was more like a slasher phase, Friday the 13th Part 3, Jaws 3D. It moved it back to the anaglyph era from the 1920s, and that's basically just cheaper for theatres to run it on a single projector. But it was really seen at this time as a B-movie gimmick. It felt cheap because the red and blue lenses distorted the colour of the film. And then just before that Avatar era took over, we had with Spy Kids 3D Game Over in 2003. But despite the cheapness of it, Rodriguez actually shot the movie in native 3D. He used 2 very expensive Sony cameras at the time. He started doing this real 3D work years before Avatar and James Cameron came on board. And when you talk about 3D, you can't talk about it without talking about James Cameron. He's obviously pushed the technology. He spent years testing the tech with IMAX documentaries. He did Ghost of the Abyss in 2003. He was pushing for this.
I need to shoot, not with 1 camera, but with 2 cameras. Kind of like human vision, 2 cameras side by side. The only problem with that is that the distance between the lenses, it has to move dynamically. If I'm coming in very, very close to an actor, I have to get the cameras closer together than they can physically go. They got to go to here sometimes. How are you going to do that? Well, you're shooting a beam splitter. One camera's looking through the beam splitter, the other camera's looking down. It's like a two-way mirror. And those cameras will move like this during the shot. If I'm tracking in on an actor from 20 feet back, those cameras will be here and they'll go to there. And it's all motion control.
Moving stuff away from the things flying at you, the screen, things popping out of the screen at you gimmick, and really working it to make 3D an immersive canvas for cinema. He wanted the screen, let's marketing buzz this, he wanted the screen to feel like a window into Pandora, not a weapon aimed at the audience. See, Avatar was the biggest movie of all time, and Hollywood just got wet on the idea that it could charge a $3 to $5 premium per ticket just by slapping 3D on the poster. Avatar was a cultural phenomenon when it came out, and 3D was part of that. You're going to see something where the world worked you, the fireflies, everything was coming out the screen at you. And that's because it was created that way. They spent nearly decades defining the technology to make that happen, not just the CGI and the motion capture and all of that, but the 3D tech behind it. And I think for a minute it's important to talk about how 3D is created. It's created in two different ways in the modern world. Natively or post-conversion. Very simply, native 3D uses a stereoscopic camera rig, basically two cameras side by side to capture two distinct perspectives of the footage. Just as your eyes would work, right? You have two eyes, you have a binocular vision, so you have, instead of one camera lens filming the action, you have one for each eye, and then they're pulled together and make the 3D image. Post-conversion 3D is the other way. They'll go and film that with a single camera lens, traditional way, and then they'll sit down with their visual artists and push things and pull things in and out of perspective to give a 3D perspective. And it can work well. Titanic 3D is an example of that. But normally it results in like a cardboard cutout effect where characters look like flat stickers floating in a sea of objects as opposed to actual volume or roundness. And that was the big problem, the rush to get extra money in the cinema tickets. So Hollywood was like, post-convert this, get it in 3D. And they varied in quality, and some of them really stood out. Conan the Barbarian in 2011. This film was shot with shaky cam, fast aggressive editing, and fast motion is the enemy of 3D because your eyes need time to lock onto what you're seeing. This was in effect a headache simulator, a combination of dark, cave-based action sequences and 3D glasses. It was just physically painful to watch. And then before PR and Hollywood made everyone, everything, everybody love Ryan Reynolds, the man who could do no wrong and will continue to make humanity better. He did make Green Lantern though, and that movie famously had a CGI search for Sir Lord Ryan Reynolds. But trying to post-convert a movie where even the main character's costume is a digital layer led to its really wonky, unnatural, uneasy depth effect. It looked like a Saturday morning cartoon, and the space scenes were really difficult to see and light deprived. You can't just throw 3D money at a production to fix a bad script and dodgy CGI. I'm really sorry, Lord Ryan. I'll flagellate later for bringing sin upon thy names. And then Exhibit A on the post-conversion is not the way to go stand. 2010's Clash of the Titans. This film was notorious. The director has since come out, Louis Leterrier, to actually say it was the biggest mistake they made. They decided to make it 3D last minute. Like 8 to 10 weeks they took to basically go from let's do this to 3D to put it into cinemas. The result was a blurry, dim mess. Characters looked like cardboard cutouts. The depth actually made people nauseous. It almost single-handedly killed the 3D movement because it destroyed audience trust. And this was the one I went back and watched. I got it, I put the glasses together, and I sat there, and there's sequences where it's really difficult to show on here, but how to explain it? Liam Neeson appearing there with his big hair and his face appears to be part of the body. The hair is the thing the 3D can't handle. And that's the thing I've noticed throughout watching it, is the hair is the hardest thing. It's one thing to put a face somewhere, but then to add this depth to it, so you end up with this almost like 3D printed hair effect going on behind the characters. If you have the opportunity to watch 3D content, go and check this one out just to see how bad it can get. Not a bad movie, it was fairly serviceable. They put a sequel out there. And yeah, let's shit on Hollywood, let's shit on 3D. Honestly, there was some rare artistic successes. Gravity was a great use of 3D, but the ones that really stand out, of course, James Cameron. We could talk about Avatar 1, 2 and 3 and its use of it. It's the gold standard, it's what's held up there. James Cameron knows what he's doing, and it's time and money. It's putting the money and putting the time in to give you the quality product at the end of the day. And let's take an example of that post-conversion 3D we spoke about. James Cameron didn't just use this fusion camera system he devised. He did the gold standard of post-conversion, Titanic 3D. James Cameron spent $18 million and over a year on the Titanic 3D conversion. He treated it like an art restoration, meticulously mapping every frame to ensure the depth felt natural. It proved that conversion can work, only if you've got his obsessive perfectionism and budget. But re-watching Titanic 3 in 3D, I was astonished by how well it was done. If it's filmed for 3D, you come in with a natural way with your blocking, with how you set the shots up, how you might put objects in the forefront you wouldn't before to give that depth. This was filmed as a 2D movie, but some of the sequences, the ballrooms, the way the structures, the pillars, the stairs, the staircases, the rails, everything looks so well done. It really is an example of 3D post-conversion, absolutely giving AAA results. For me, one of the best examples of 3D though is Martin Scorsese. Yep, he made a 3D movie. He made a kids 3D movie, Hugo. Scorsese used 3D to pay homage to the magic of early cinema. He used depth to make the clockwork of the station feel tactile and immersive. And again, it wasn't things flying at the screen, it was the screen becoming a window. And just watching Hugo back and seeing the way that he puts objects in the forefront, there's little things he does when the character's up in the top of the station looking down to the floor through the cogs of the clock. They just make the framing of it work so well. You're not just looking at an open sequence with a few characters in the forefront or back. It's the way they layer props or static objects in to add to that. It's absolute masterclass in 3D filmmaking, maybe even more so than Avatar, because Avatar is generated in a controlled environment. But Scorsese went out and filmed this movie. It's an absolute standout of the 3D genre. And it becomes clear, right? You have auteurs or visionaries looking to put their singular focus onto the screen. Hey Hollywood, here's your template. Invest the time, invest the money, get the results. But no, money went looking for more and more ideas. The post-conversion trade carried on running. I'll give you an idea of how mad the 3D bubble was back in the day. In the UK, we have Sky and Sky Sports. It's the singular biggest sports broadcaster, but it's where they show the football. But the Premier League is their crown jewel. It's the national sport. It's the biggest thing. So in 2010, Sky launched Sky Sports 3D, the first dedicated 3D channel in Europe. And they're banking on the idea that if people wanted to watch Avatar in the cinema in 3D, they'd want to watch football in 3D. So there was a game, Man United versus Chelsea in April 2010. They hyped it, the future of television. This is your ability to watch 3D football. And there was 1,000 bars or pubs in the UK that actually put this on. And it became very clear, regardless of the game or the result, don't need to talk about the result, but for football, 3D is like worse for the viewer. Try and give the best 3D effect. They brought the camera lower to the ground to give you a more depth perception. But it took that kind of tactical top-down view that you get from watching football on TV. You saw more of the grass but less of the game. And think about it, 3D, unless the ball's being kicked directly at the camera, which never happens in a professional match, the 3D effect added nothing. It just made the scoreboard look like it was floating awkwardly in your lap. Sky Sports 3D actually lasted 5 years, which surprised me. It went from the next big thing to a defunct footnote in just 5 years. Proved that 3D was a gimmick. And 3D technology, they tried to make it as accessible as possible, but how much of a hardware headache there is to actually get it working at home. Active 3D glasses were like mini computers. They had batteries, they had to be synced via Bluetooth or infrared, and they physically blinked the left and right lens shut 120 times a second. Point where like the Sony glasses didn't work with the Samsung TVs, and then Panasonic had its own standard. Even within Sony, some glasses were RF, some were Bluetooth, some IR. It was a mess. I have to say, in this day and age, if you have a passing interest in watching 3D content, one of the biggest barriers is removed. The Zuckerbot has actually helped this. The Meta VR headsets allow you to watch 3D content in 3D without the need for those glasses, because you've got the two lenses, you've got the double view for the headset, and it works surprisingly well. You don't need those dastardly glasses, you just have to put a bloody headset on your head. But it does work well. So in closing, Channel 69 is a place of taste and decency, and we can all admit the single use of 3D as Avatar or Hugo. Nothing else comes close to topping those two, does it? Hand on heart, I am not joking here. Jackass 3D is the greatest use of the 3D technology Hollywood has ever used. Hugo uses it for art, Avatar uses it for spectacle, Jackass 3D uses it for puerile spectacle.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
Jackass is fundamentally about bodies in the space and the impact of objects and things coming together. 3D heightens the threat of the stunts in Jackass. There was a piece of footage filmed and taken to Paramount Studios to show them how the 3D would work in a Jackass movie. The sketch was called The Helicopter, and it involved a naked Chris Pontius with a piece of string attached to a part of his appendage, which was tied to a remote control helicopter. The remote controlled helicopter would then take off, come towards the camera, and pull the appendage in a direction towards the camera, with the depth being apparent. And it worked. The helicopter convinced Paramount executives to sign up a $20 million budget to go and make the Jackass 3D movie. We spoke about Hollywood going the cheap route and doing post-conversions for 3D. Jackass. The Jackass crew used a $500,000 3D camera rig to get together what they needed to do. They paired the 3D rigs with the Phantom high-speed cameras filming at 1,000 frames per second. This meant you had this slow-motion 3D imagery that I don't think exists anywhere else in Hollywood. Particularly the open and closing sequences of the Jackass movies, where they go for something a bit more big budget within, the stunts and the slapstick comedy violence they use, but they're genuinely beautiful. Because of the slow motion, your brain's got time to process every single layer of the 3D within the image. So when something splashes against a character's face, the droplets of water, confetti, fish guts, paintballs, they're frozen in space, and you see every ripple effect come out. When something like Clash of the Titans uses 3D to hide bad CGI but then simultaneously make static human images look like awful 3D,
Toga, 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 toga. I'm Johnny Knoxville. This is the jet ski.
Jack has used the 3D to emphasize the physicality of the world. You see the ripples in the skin when someone gets hit by a paintball, the exact distance between the Ram and Ryan Dunn. An absolute peak of the technology, but with that pure old 12-year-old humour that just makes Jackass work. Instead of blockbusters pretending that 3D is classy, adding layers to the scene, making it more like a canvas and real and life and a window into the soul. And no, Jackass is going into that stuff flying at your face trope, but doing it on a level and scale that's never been done before. It's better than Avatar. It's better than Hugo. It's almost doing what that early cinema, the cinema of attractions, was trying to do. It's not about plot, it's about showing the audience something they've never seen before: a woman dancing, a train coming at the screen. Most serious 3D movies failed because they tried to make 3D a narrative or subtle. Jackass realised that 3D is the carnival attraction and did it at a level that hadn't been done before by throwing dildos, bees, poo cocktail supreme directly at the camera. They're returning 3D to its honest roots, it's in a vulgar sense. And the saddest part of this is there's no Jackass 3D Blu-ray. In order to watch the footage back for doing this review, I had to go through Discord servers and Reddit sublinks, and eventually stumbled across a copy on a Google Drive and was able to download it and watch it as Johnny Knoxville and Jeff Tremaine and God intended. And my word, doesn't that just sum up the mess of the 3D experience? It's so inaccessible. There is something there with 3D, and it's not a perfect technology, and I don't think it's ever going to be mainstream in the way they tried to make it. A generation looks back at this era and we have that 1920s, 1950s, 1980s, 2010s. Maybe Jackass 3D, as it should be, will be held up as the absolute pinnacle of the technology. And it's not the content. Like it or hate it, Jackass, you have to appreciate the art. They got the most expensive camera rig they could do, the most high frames per second camera they could do, and they went and built every sketch, every skit around blocking, distance, and spectacle. And that's what Scorsese and James Cameron did. So in our closing argument, Jeff Tremaine, he deserves to be part of this conversation around 3D pioneers. Channel 69, thank you very much.
Would you like to know more?